So what are we doing this Saturday? There's never church on Saturday of the Holy Week, yet I think it's very worthwhile to take a magnifying glass to Matthew's narrative about this day's activities. So the main character is dead and buried. All done, right? They thought they were done on Friday. Everything they wanted accomplished was planned, pushed, paid, and argued for, and finally executed yesterday. When one of them, perhaps in the middle of the night, suddenly sits up in his bed and says, "Wait a minute." So, probably very early in the morning on Shabbat, they call a meeting and then march themselves over to Pilate's rental in Jerusalem. Pilate face palms. These guys again. The interesting thing is that they remember what Jesus was teaching about rising from the dead, while there is a lot of indication that the disciples don't. The disciples think the women speak, I quote, nonsense when they first return from the empty tomb. The Jewish authorities speak of Jesus as the deceiver and of what is likely to be claimed by his disciples about his resurrection as a deception. It's fake. This exact verbiage makes it into all the Jewish polemic about the Christians by the end of the first century and onward. We know that grave robbing and violations were not unusual in antiquity, frequently in search of treasure and not for the purpose of transferring the corpses. But we also know that an inscription has been unearthed dating to 2nd or 3rd century with fragments of the law that was passed, and something because of the Jewish narrative regarding this very incident with Jesus. The law specifies that sepulchres and graves should remain unmolested. The criminalization includes anyone who has cast out bodies that have been buried in a tomb and or who with malicious deception has transferred them elsewhere. Now, we've just seen Pilate last night when he favored Jesus' disciple, Joseph of Arimathea's request to release the body. Now, the Jewish leaders ask Pilate to presume hostility towards the disciples. He is now being persuaded that the disciples who all fled during the arrest and crucifixion will suddenly find courage to rob the grave. Hard to know why Pilate goes along with this. I think we all sense his exasperation with them, perhaps because they put the end date on it, until the 3rd day only. And Pilate has soldiers to spare, as the Jerusalem garrison was fortified during Passover to prepare for any unruliness. The massive influx of Jews to Jerusalem made the Roman authorities very uneasy. Ecce custodian, go make secure as you know how. As you know how. How many he sends, we do not know. The noun in the Sunday incident is a plural, guards. Imagine the frantic busyness around that tomb while our main character lies in there, no longer in the picture, but very much at the center of it all still. The Pharisees walking around, ordering the soldiers exactly how and where to apply the wax into which the imprint of a seal would be made. Opening the tomb would break the wax and the seal. Now we are really done with him, back to observing the Shabbat. I think we are meant to laugh at this. So many absurdities here, that a grave should be guarded, that killing him wasn't enough, even dead he still bugged them. This is it. This is the best that they know how to secure the tomb. You're looking at it. The largest stone, the wax and the seal, and the Roman guards. Luke has told us that Jesus' words from the cross were, "These people don't know what they are doing." That's the framework for all of this, I think. The best that they know how is utterly clueless, so far from anything remotely relevant or proportionate to the events at hand. I think we are meant to note here that thwarting God's purposes is pretty much a comedy of errors, woefully inadequate. And then the next morning, I'd like to imagine that those were the same soldiers who were taunting and mocking and crucifying Jesus. Could be. Knowing how biblical stories are weaved, I think it's likely there is some continuity here. The guards who are there to assure that Jesus stays dead become as dead themselves. I think again this is meant to be funny in its absurdity. They were there to spook the robbers, but they end up being spooked themselves. In charge no more, strong no more, now who's the laughing stock? And the angel is just sitting on that big stone, reminder that the angels are always there to show that heaven and earth are demonstrably united in bringing about God's purposes. The verbiage that the guards and the women in turn use to carry the news of the empty tomb to others is exactly the same, with very different outcomes. Another frantic meeting of the Jewish authorities is called. They give the guards money to perpetuate the deceptive narrative. From make sure they don't steal him to just say they stole him. To sleep on duty was a capital offense in the Roman army, and so the soldiers would be contributing to their own demise. How will the Jewish authorities placate Pilate when he hears about the guards sleeping is uncertain. Perhaps more lies, or would Pilate even care enough to get involved with this entire affair further? Why the guards choose to exchange what looks like a profoundly once-in-a-lifetime spiritual experience during which they were not killed but spared for some money, I will never understand. I'd like to think that this is a cliffhanger. Will they pocket the money and be able to tell lies in perpetuity and never reveal truthfully what happened to them? The last guy didn't want the money. Judas, of course. And I think we are meant to remember what happened the last time these people paid someone off. Having tied all the loose ends as they know how, the chief priests think, now we're done. What they don't know is that they are never really going to be done with him. For better or for worse, they will never get respite from this. The control of the narrative that they seek will never be theirs. I'm imagining these two chief priests on their deathbeds. The dread at the memories of that weekend, the scheming, the clinking of coins, all their machinations, their life's work, and with their last gasping breaths, they're whispering, what ifs? Not really having any reason to believe their own story of the disciples' theft. Now they find themselves hoping that perhaps he did indeed rise, and that they themselves would stand even a tiny chance of staking a claim to such resurrected future. Can you imagine? In Matthew, these Saturday stories serve so well in relating the larger message of this gospel. At the beginning, Matthew narrates how the child who is Emmanuel, God with us, would meet dangerous opposition in his mission of saving his people from their sins, and would need divine intervention against the very powerful Herod. At the end of the gospel, Matthew shows that neither Pilate, nor Pharisees, nor chief priests, nor Roman guards, nor large stones, nor wax, nor seal will successfully hold Jesus in the netherworld. He who at the end of the gospel will say, I am with you all days until the end of the age, has overcome it all. So this in-between Saturday is about the transference, the cosmic shift of power. Do you feel the move? The one who had previously voluntarily relinquished his power, emptied himself, became nothing, obedient to death, even the Friday death on the cross, is about to pick up his crown and reach for his scepter again. And soon, by his mere word, a powerful earthquake.